Democratic Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi is one of the latest lawmakers to come out in favor of an impeachment investigation. He serves on the Intelligence and Oversight Committees. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, thanks for coming on. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Chuck.
Let me just ask this. Why now? Why did you wait?
Well, last week, Chairman Nadler formally requested cooperation from the other committees of jurisdiction with investigative authority, such as Oversight and Intelligence Committees, on which I sit, to cooperate with his impeachment investigation. So I had to take a stand and decide whether I wanted to support efforts to cooperate with the impeachment investigation. I really didn't relish the thought of beginning an impeachment or investigation or inquiry, but I decided I had to support it. I'm encouraging cooperation, and I expect that our committees will cooperate.
What is the impeachable offense these days in your reasoning? Nancy Pelosi once said, in her way of holding off on calling for an inquiry, she said, well, he practically self-impeaches every day, which was an interesting way of putting it. She got a soundbite, sounded like she was ready to look at impeachment, but at the same time, she's not ready to look at impeachment. What is impeachable in your mind? What has he done that says, you know what, we got to question whether he belongs in office?
Well, I think that the Mueller report, documents in detail, for instance, the various obstruction of justice charges, I think are impeachable conduct. But really now we have to continue with the investigation. The impeachment inquiry or investigation has to continue to assemble the evidence necessary to decide whether to take the next step after that.
What are you investigating?
I think that the courts...
Can I ask this? Are you only looking at this through the prism of the Mueller report? Or at what point do you look at the diversion of FEMA funds, what happens at the Trump Hotel, things like that? At what point in your mind does that belong in this process?
Well, I think that at the point that, crimes are established or, high crimes or misdemeanors are established, I think that questions of judgment are a different issue altogether. For instance, a couple weeks ago he proposed buying Greenland. That's something that, I think it's a proposal that Congress would put on ice, so to speak. But on the other hand, when the president actually commits crimes, that's a different issue altogether, and I think that is impeachable conduct.
So you look at the Mueller report as sort of separate and above sort of the other stuff. Now, let me ask you this. Do you believe the president making a case for Putin to come in the G7 is that all circumstantial evidence on the Mueller report?
Well, I think you've raised a really good point, which is that I think the Mueller report did raise the question about even though the linkages may not have established a criminal conspiracy on the part of the Trump campaign to participate in Russia's interference in the 2016 elections, those linkages have not been investigated for their counterintelligence risks. And I believe one of the counterintelligence risks created by some of those linkages may provide some of the motive for why the president behaves the way he does relative to Putin. Just as an example, in my questioning of Bob Mueller, he said that they did not form a counterintelligence assessment related to the financial dealings and ties between Mr. Trump and the Russians, and that's in part why we're, delving into Deutsche Bank's records. Just today, we learned that Deutsche Bank may even possess some of those tax returns that we've been trying to look at. And the reason why that's important is that might help explain, why the president wants to curry favor with Putin, why he sides with Putin almost in every form, and why he wants to bring Putin into the G7.
What would you tell your constituents, if they ask you right now, what would you tell your constituents that you've been able to do when it comes to accountability and oversight of this president that has had an impact?
Well, I can point to one issue which is very timely, which is the census. Thanks to Chairman Cummings' leadership on the Oversight Committee, we brought great attention to the potential addition of the citizenship question to the census, and actually held hearings and inquiries into the true motives for why they wanted to bring that citizenship question onto the survey. I think that helped to highlight the fact that actually they were trying to bring a chilling effect on the counting of, for instance, immigrants and other hard-to-count communities. Right. I think that the reason, in part, why President Trump did not persist with trying to add the citizenship question, even after the Supreme Court ruled against him, was because of this great advocacy on the part of the wider community, but also, for instance, Chairman Cummings and the Oversight Committee's leadership on this issue.
Do you think it's fair to say Democrats have done enough on the accountability and oversight front as far as the public's concerned? Or do you accept some of the criticism that's coming, hey, you guys need to do more, you're not doing enough, you're not going at them enough, or you're not... What would you say to some of that criticism?
We absolutely have to do more, and we have to do more, unfortunately, every single day as we learn more about what's going on. You know, you brought up the border wall. There are multiple outrageous pieces of conduct that emerged from that story. He's dangling the pardon power to encourage people to commit wrongdoing, potentially. He's potentially violating environmental rules and regulations. He may be trampling on property owners' rights.
That's a lot of potentially and maybes. How are you going to find out, right?
Yes, and that's why, you know, I think that it's so important for us to investigate, have hearings. If they don't cooperate in producing evidence and documents, then we have to issue subpoenas and go to the courts. I think in the courts we're seeing that they are upholding our right to oversight, as they have for hundreds of years now.